What's good, hoop heads? Your courtside analyst Tips and Streams is back in the game. On the slate today, breakdowns for the latest NBA matchups set to light up the hardwood. Before we tip off, make sure you slam that subscribe button on our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all our predictions and top picks. So, let's get started. The first today's prediction is for the matchup between Brooklyn Nets and Detroit Pistons. This season, the Detroit Pistons are seriously underperforming with a disappointing 2-27 record, showing major gaps in their offensive firepower and defensive grit. They're only netting an average of 109.2 points per game, putting them at a dismal 28th spot league-wide, and defensively, they're getting burned for about 120.9 points every outing, ranking them 26th on the defensive charts. Their field goal stats are at 46.5%, but it's their three-point game that's really hurting, barely hitting a third of their shots at 33.4%. Injury woes have hit the Pistons hard, sidelining key playmakers like Killian Hayes, Jalen Duren, and Monty Morris for the next showdown. This heaps more weight on the shoulders of Cade Cunningham, who's leading the pack in points and assists, and Ausar Thompson, the team's top board crasher. Despite these hurdles, the Pistons have shown some grit, especially in their recent face-off with the Nets, where they managed to sink 4% from the field and a commendable 42.9% from downtown. Meanwhile, the Brooklyn Nets are in a somewhat better groove with a 14-15 tally. They're dropping an average of 116 points on a 46.8% shooting clip, while conceding 115.5 points on defense. The Nets boast a more rounded offense-defense play, with stars like Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges lighting up the scoreboard and Cameron Johnson dishing out key dimes. Their three-point game is on point at 38.5%, and they dominate the glass with an average of 46.7 rebounds per game. In Detroit duels, the Pistons' home court might give them an edge, but the Nets have shown they can ball out on foreign courts, and their recent victory over Detroit suggests they're packing more heat in this rivalry. The Nets bench is feeling the absence of Ben Simmons and Lonnie Walker, both benched due to injuries. For Detroit, Monty Morris is the notable absentee. Looking at the stats and latest plays, the odds makers are favoring the Brooklyn Nets. The over-under set at 232.5 points reflects the scoring rhythm of both squads. My take? This could be the moment the Pistons break their losing spell, or at least beat the spread. The Nets have a decent road game, but are only 7-6 against the spread, and they've been shaky as road favorites. I'm betting on the Detroit Pistons to beat the spread, taking them at +7. The next prediction is for the match between Orlando Magic and Washington Wizards. Tonight's basketball showdown is set to be a thriller as the Orlando Magic, boasting a commendable 17-11 record, gear up to take on the Washington Wizards, currently lagging with a 5-23 record at the vibrant Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. The Magic step onto the court as the 7-point favorites, a testament to their impressive run this season. Diving into the Magic's playbook, their record against the spread this year stands at an impressive 19-9-0, including 2 victories covering the spread as a 7-point favorite or more. They're dropping an average of 113.1 points per game, landing them in the 20th spot league-wide, while their defense is locking down opponents to 110.4 points per game, a solid 5th in the rankings. It's crucial to point out, though, that the Magic's magic seems to fade a bit on the road, averaging 107.4 points away compared to a hefty 118.9 at home. Their three-point game has room for improvement, with an average of 10.0 threes per game at a 33.6% success rate. In their last 10 games, Orlando's offensive rhythm has slightly dropped to 111.4 points, with a minor uptick in points conceded, averaging 114.5. The Wizards, meanwhile, are on the other end of the performance spectrum. They're netting an average of 117. 0 points per game, placing them 10th in the NBA, but their defense is leaking points, being the weakest in the league with 126.6 points conceded per game. Their rebounding game is also a concern, ranking last in both rebounds gained and allowed, with 39.2 and 49.4 per game, respectively. Their home court does bring a slight offensive boost, averaging 117.5 points compared to 116.8 on the road. In the realm of three-point shooting, they're ranked 18th, sinking 12.3 per game at a 35.8% clip. In their recent 10 games, the Wizards have been even more generous defensively, allowing an average of 129.7 points. Looking at their direct clashes, the Magic have had the upper hand against the Wizards, clinching 4 wins in their last 5 meetings. However, Orlando's recent road games haven't been as successful, with only 1 win in their last 6 away matches. The Wizards, though, have been more consistent against the spread in their recent outings, going 4-1 in their last 5. Injury updates are crucial in this face-off. The Magic are eyeing the fitness of Joe Ingles, Markelle Fultz, and Jalen Suggs, while the Wizards are keeping tabs on DeLon Wright and Kyle Kuzma. Considering these stats and trends, I'm leaning towards the Orlando Magic to come out on top and cover the spread. Their superior defensive stats and overall stronger season performance give them an edge, despite road challenges. The Wizards' leaky defense might just be the crack the Magic need to secure victory. So, my money's on the Orlando Magic with a -7. The next prediction is for the match between Atlanta Hawks and Chicago Bulls. Tonight's showdown between the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls is shaping up to be an epic clash on the hardwood. The Hawks, with a mixed bag of results lately, are showing some serious firepower on offense, dropping an average of 122.7 points and hitting nearly half their shots. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray are lighting it up, especially Young, who's pouring in 28.3 points a game. Their sharpshooting from downtown is impressive at 37.5%, and they're pretty clutch at the charity stripe too, with an 83.1% free throw rate. But they've got some chinks in their armor defensively, giving up 122.9 points on average and letting opponents sink 50.2% of their attempts. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bulls, fresh off breaking their losing funk, are showing a more even-keeled game. They're putting up 110 points on average, and they're shooting solid at 45.5%. Their defense is holding up better, only allowing 112.4 points on a 47.1% shooting rate. Big names like DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are the driving forces behind their play. The Bulls aren't too shabby beyond the arc either, with a 3-point average of 36.6%, and a decent free throw percentage at 79.1%. For the Hawks, Trae Young's status is up in the air, while DeAndre Hunter and A.J. Griffin are definitely sitting this one out. Over at the Bulls camp, Nikola Vucevic's participation is uncertain, and Zach LaVine, Torrey Craig, and Lonzo Ball are all on the sidelines. Taking into account the home court factor and the Bulls' recent form, they seem to have the upper hand in this duel. The Bulls are hitting their stride and look ready to make the most of their home turf. Keep an eye out for any last-minute lineup changes, especially due to injuries, as they could really shake things up. All in all, while the Hawks are a force on offense, the Bulls' upward trajectory and home court advantage might just tip the scales. It's looking like the Bulls might snag this one, probably beating the spread. I'm backing the Chicago Bulls at -1.5. Just a heads up, NBA matchups can be full of surprises, so it's smart to keep tabs on the latest team updates and injury news. The next prediction is for the match between Indiana Pacers and Houston Rockets. This showdown is shaping up to be a basketball bonanza, as both squads display a mix of explosive energy and cunning game plans this season. The Pacers' journey has been a wild ride, igniting the court with early fireworks, but then hitting a snag, now balancing at a 14-14 tally. Offensively, they're a spectacle, topping the charts with a whopping 126.5 points per game. But their defensive game is shaky, sitting at 29th in the league for points conceded, averaging 125.8. Their recent outings, especially on foreign courts, haven't quite hit the high notes. On the flip side, the Rockets have been formidable, especially in their fortress. Their home record is a staggering 12-2, anchored by a steely defense, crafted by coach Ime Udoka. They've really clamped down on rivals' long-range efforts, holding them to a mere 28% from downtown at the Toyota Center. That's crucial, given the Pacers' love affair with three-pointers. The Pacers' injury list has Bruce Brown tagged as uncertain, while the Rockets have both Reggie Bullock and Terry Eason under a question mark for this clash. Comparing head-to-head, in their last 10 encounters, the Pacers bagged 7 wins, but the spread was even, with both teams beating it 5 times. In their past 6 matchups in Houston, the Pacers clinched 4 wins and beat the spread in 3. What spices up this game is the contrasting play styles. The Pacers excel in offense, while the Rockets adopt a more holistic approach, with a fortress-like defense. This could be pivotal, especially with the Pacers' current form wobbling in away games. The odds and pundits are nodding towards the Rockets, thanks to their home dominance and defensive might. The Pacers, despite their scoring flair, might struggle to pierce the Rockets' defense, more so on the road. The Rockets' knack for dictating the game's rhythm and their defensive fortress positions them as the frontrunners. Under coach Ime Udoka, the Rockets have transformed, particularly at home. They've snatched 12 out of their initial 14 home games, riding on their defensive prowess. They're the stingiest at home, both in points allowed and in curbing three-pointers. The Pacers' reliance on threes might backfire here, as the Rockets are the league's top defenders against perimeter shots. Given all this, the forecast tilts towards a Rockets triumph, likely beating the spread. The game's anticipated to be a high scorer, but might not breach the 239-point over-under threshold. My bet is on the Houston Rockets to seize victory and outdo the minus 3-point spread. The next prediction is for the match between Memphis Grizzlies and New Orleans Pelicans. The New Orleans Pelicans are gearing up in their home court stronghold, boasting a solid 9-6 record, to face off against the Memphis Grizzlies, who are trying to find their rhythm on the road with a 7-8 scorecard. The Pelicans are stepping onto the court as the hot picks, holding a 5-point edge in the spread against the Grizzlies, with the game's over-under set at a whopping 229.5 points. It's shaping up to be a scoreboard-lighting showdown. Diving into recent playbooks, the Pelicans have been on a roll, netting victories in 8 out of their last 12 showdowns. Their offensive game is on point, averaging 115.7 points, with a sharp-shooting 48.2% from the field. Star players like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson are the main event, driving the team's scoring and rebounding force. On the flip side, the Memphis Grizzlies are riding a 3-game victory wave, but still hitting snags, especially in putting points on the board and shooting precision. They're lagging in the league with a mere 107-point game average and the lowest bucket-making rate. Yet, their defensive hustle is not to be overlooked, placing 9th in points allowed and clamping down on opponents' scoring chances. A game-changer for this face-off is Ja Morant's comeback to the Grizzlies lineup post-suspension. His track record shows he's a major playmaker for the team, and his impact is a game-changer. Looking at recent clashes, the Grizzlies have had the upper hand over the Pelicans, with Morant sealing a recent win. This could give them a mental edge in this matchup. However, the Pelicans' fortress-like home performance could swing the advantage their way. In their last 10 matchups, the Grizzlies have outplayed and outscored the Pelicans 6 times. Specifically, in their last 5 games on the Pelicans' turf, the Grizzlies have come out on top twice. Injury updates are crucial, with the Grizzlies missing key players like Derrick Rose and Steven Adams, while the Pelicans are without Larry Nance Jr. and Matt Ryan, keeping Cody Zeller's status in the air. I'm betting on a high-scoring game, with the Grizzlies averaging 118.7 points in their recent games. Both teams play at a brisk pace, the Grizzlies averaging 104.5 possessions per game on the road, and the Pelicans at 102.5 at home, likely pushing the total points above the 228 line. All signs point to a Pelicans win, and a score that soars past the over-under. Their offensive firepower and rock-solid home game give them the edge. However, the Grizzlies' recent triumph on this court makes the 5-point spread seem steep. In the end, it's a nail-biter. The Pelicans are determined not to repeat a home loss to the same rival, but I foresee this game being a buzzer-beater. It's a tough call, but I'm leaning towards the Grizzlies, especially with Morant in play, over the Pelicans led by fatty Zion Williamson. My chips are on the Memphis Grizzlies taking those 5 points. The next prediction is for the match between Minnesota Timberwolves and Oklahoma City Thunder. The showdown at Paycom Center is heating up as the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder gear up for a hardwood battle of epic proportions. The Timberwolves are roaring into this game with a fierce 22-6 record, while the Thunder, riding a 18-9 wave, aren't trailing far behind. It's a scoring fiesta, with the Thunder dropping an impressive average of 120.7 buckets per game. The Timberwolves, meanwhile, are locking down the court, only letting slip through an average of 106.6 points. On the betting hardwood, the Thunder are rolling in as the 3.5-point favorites, with the total score anticipated to bounce around 226 points. They've been dunking on the spread, outmaneuvering it in 18 of 27 matchups, including a solid 9-3 when they're the top dogs by 3.5 points or more. The Timberwolves, while they don't often beat the spread as underdogs, have been lighting up the scoreboard, blasting past 225 in 3 of their last 5 showdowns. Spotlight players include Anthony Edwards and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, both tearing up the court this season. Edwards is a scoring juggernaut for the Timberwolves, and Gilgeous-Alexander's versatile play has him in the MVP buzz. At home, the Thunder's offense is on fire, averaging 123.7 points with a sizzling 38.3% from beyond the arc. The Timberwolves counter with top-tier defense and rebounding stats, leading the league in opponent points and ranking 7th in rebounds. The Timberwolves have Karl Anthony Towns on the questionable list, while the Thunder might miss the spark from Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams. In recent face-offs, the Thunder and Timberwolves have been neck and neck, with the Thunder clinching the last one. Both teams are in form, but the Thunder's home court and spread-covering knack tilt the scales in their favor. In their last 10 matchups, the Timberwolves claimed 9 but only beat the spread in 6. However, in their last 4 games in Oklahoma City, the Timberwolves have not only won but also dominated the spread. Wrapping it up, while the Timberwolves show grit, I'm banking on the Thunder's defensive edge and home turf to clinch this one. Still, my bet's not on a Thunder win. I'm shooting for the total points by the Timberwolves and Thunder to stay under 226, considering their defensive prowess. Minnesota leads in defensive efficiency, and Oklahoma City isn't far behind. The next prediction is for the match between Utah Jazz and San Antonio Spurs. The upcoming showdown at the Frostbank Center between the Utah Jazz and the San Antonio Spurs is a hoop dream for fans and bettors. The Jazz, boasting a 12-18 record, hit the court as the favorites over the Spurs, who've been grappling with a 4-24 record. Despite their rough patch, the Spurs are aiming to snap their 4-game skid on their home turf. Offensively, the Jazz are putting up a solid show with an average of 113 points per game, placing them 21st in the league. Their field goal percentage stands at 45.6%, with a 35.7% success rate from three-point land. However, their defense raises eyebrows, conceding an average of 119.4 points on 48.4% shooting. Stars like Lauri Markkanen, averaging 23.7 points and 8.6 rebounds, along with Jordan Clarkson's 17.3 points per game, are the Jazz's linchpins. Conversely, the Spurs' average of 110.6 points on 45. 4% shooting comes courtesy of key players like Victor Wembanyama and Devin Vassell, yet their defense is floundering, allowing 123 points on 49.4% shooting. Injuries might be a game-changer here, with the Jazz's Talon Horton-Tucker and Keontae George, and the Spurs' Wembanyama and Zach Collins all nursing injuries. Recent form analysis shows the Jazz clinching 5 out of their last 7 games, while the Spurs are caught in a losing vortex, falling to teams like the Pelicans, Bucks, Bulls, and Mavericks. The Jazz also dominate the boards, ranking 2nd in offensive rebounds per game. Betting odds lean towards the Jazz with a 1.5-point spread and a total over-under of 242.5 points. Betting stats highlight Utah's prowess in covering the spread in 16 of their 30 games, overshadowing the Spurs' performance. In matchups with over-under at 242.5 points, both teams have collectively breached this mark 9 and 11 times this season. Injury updates show the Jazz's Horton, Tucker, and George as doubtful, while the Spurs have Charles Bassey out and Wembanyama questionable. Considering the team's form, the Spurs' defensive hiccups, injury concerns, and stats comparison, the Jazz seem to have an edge. But in the unpredictable NBA, it's smart to weigh all factors before betting. To wrap it up, my forecast tilts towards the Utah Jazz, not just triumphing, but also beating the spread. Utah's offensive edge and the Spurs' defensive troubles tilt the scales in Utah's favor. So I'm backing the Utah Jazz to seize victory and surpass the minus 1.5-point margin. The next prediction is for the match between Sacramento Kings and Portland Trailblazers. In the upcoming showdown, the Sacramento Kings are ready to battle it out with the Portland Trailblazers at the Moda Center in Portland, Oregon. Riding high with a solid 17-11 tally, the Kings boast an explosive offense, dropping an average of 117. 5 buckets per game, and securing the 8th spot in the league rankings. Meanwhile, the Trailblazers are in a bit of a slump, with a 7-21 record and scoring an average of 108 points per game, which puts them near the bottom of the pack at 29th in the league. While Sacramento's scoring game is on fire, their defense isn't quite up to par, letting opponents score about 117.4 points per game. The Blazers have a slightly tighter defense, giving up 114.7 points on average. On the rebounding front, the Kings are grabbing an average of 43.2 rebounds, with the Blazers trailing a bit with 41. A key to this game will be the guard showdown. The Kings' De'Aaron Fox is a force to reckon with, expected to rack up 29 points, snatch 5 rebounds, and serve up 7 assists. He's facing off against Portland's Anfernee Simons, who's been netting an average of 27.1 points and dishing out 5.9 assists per game. However, Simons' defensive game has some gaps, which Fox might just exploit with his dynamic play. Looking at their recent encounters, the Kings have had the upper hand, winning and beating the spread in 6 of their last 10 face-offs. In their last 5 games in Portland, the Kings clinched 3 wins and outperformed the spread 4 times. For the upcoming game, the Kings have Alex Len and Malik Monk marked as questionable. On the Blazers' side, DeAndre Ayton and Shaedon Sharpe are also listed as questionable. Recent trends show the Kings shining against the spread, covering it in 3 of their last 5 games and often ending up in high-scoring matches, topping the total in 3 of their last 5 games. The Blazers, on the other hand, are in a tough spot, with only 1 win in their last 5 games and a similar track record against the spread. The odds are tipping in Sacramento's favor, pegged as 7.5-point favorites, with the over-under at a hefty 236.5 points. It's intriguing since both teams typically score about 11 points less than this total. However, the Kings and their opponents have surpassed this total 14 times this season, while Portland has done so just 4 times. In conclusion, while the Kings look set to snag the win, their defensive gaps and Portland's home court advantage might tighten the game more than the odds indicate. A wise bet would be on the Kings to win, but the Trailblazers could very well cover the spread, especially given their decent performance as underdogs. As for the total points, I'm betting on it staying under the 237 mark, considering the Kings' recent average of 112.3 points and allowing 119.7, while Portland has been averaging 110.7 and conceding 116 points per game. The last prediction for today is for the matchup between Charlotte Hornets and Los Angeles Clippers. In the electrifying realm of hoops, a marquee matchup is brewing as the Charlotte Hornets prepare to face off against the Los Angeles Clippers. This game promises to be an exhilarating blend of contrasting styles and dynamics. The Clippers have been dominating their home turf this season, boasting a record of 17 victories against 12 losses. Their game is marked by an equilibrium of aggressive offense and tenacious defense, averaging a score of 116.7 while conceding 112.7 points. Their skill from downtown is notable, with a 5th-ranked three-point shooting accuracy of 38.0%. Stars like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Ivica Zubac have been pivotal, showcasing their prowess in scoring, rebounding, and assists. Conversely, the Charlotte Hornets are navigating through turbulent waters this season. Their average score stands at 110.4, but their defense has been found wanting, allowing 120.9 points on average. Their vulnerability, especially against 3-point shots, looms as a potential game-changer. Despite the valiant efforts of players like Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward, they need to elevate their game to match the Clippers. The Hornets' injury roster includes Frank Ntilikina, LaMelo Ball, and Mark Williams sidelined for this clash, with Brandon Miller's participation uncertain. The Clippers' injury list cites Kawhi Leonard as doubtful, while Mason Plumlee and Moussa Diabate are out of the game. Historically, the Hornets have struggled against the Clippers, failing to secure a win in their last 10 encounters, though managing to beat the spread in 2 of those games. The recent form of both teams is starkly different. The Clippers have been on a winning spree, dominating their recent games and proving strong against the spread. Their fortress, the Crypto.com arena, could be a decisive factor. In contrast, the Hornets have been faltering, both in securing wins and in beating the spread. Analyzing overall statistics, head-to-head history, recent performances, and key player dynamics, the scales tip in favor of a Clippers triumph. They excel in scoring efficiency, defensive strength, and home court prowess. Their superior three-point shooting and rebounding are expected to outclass the Hornets. The betting odds favor a Clippers win, predicted to surpass the 10.5-point spread, with the total score likely exceeding the set line of 228.5 points. Although I'm usually cautious with double-digit margins in the NBA, the Hornets' current form and their track record of covering the spread only 11 times in the last 28 games as underdogs tilt my bet towards the Los Angeles Clippers. They are not my usual pick, but their current form, including covering the spread in 7 of their last 10 games, makes them my choice to win and cover the 10.5-point spread. This prediction, grounded in the current stats and form of both teams, should be viewed as an informed guide rather than a definitive forecast. The unpredictable nature of the NBA always leaves room for surprises, and any prediction should be taken with this in mind.